What is up, Light Fighters? Welcome back to the channel. This is Light Fighters Anonymous. Thank you for tuning in. This is hopefully part 2 of why combat medicine is actually very easy and everyone can do it, including you. And today we're going to be tearing apart my IFAK, going over why it is better than your IFAK.
There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. Think it's time we stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
All right, guys, so what up? What I have here in front of me is actually my IFAK that I currently use, as well as a couple other designs of IFAKs, and we'll go over those. But first things first is what we need to do is talk about what an IFAK is and what it isn't. An IFAK is, I know it stands for Individual First Aid Kit, but it is not a boo-boo kit or a traditional first aid kit for cuts, scrapes, and small injuries or for medicine. Don't keep that shit in there, okay? Your IFAK is for major injuries, major bleeds, and life threats pretty much only, okay? Mine is basically in case somebody gets shot with a gun or gets a very large laceration, okay? Life-threatening bleeds is basically what this is designed to carry. Medical gear is cumbersome. You can only carry so much in a small package, so you want to focus on the things that are most likely to happen, and the things that you can control most effectively with the smallest tools possible. So your IFAK is not a boo-boo kit. I do carry a boo-boo kit. I don't tell you not to carry a boo-boo kit, but it is not in my IFAK. In my boo-boo kit, I carry, typical things, some basic medicine, some little bandages, some super glue, which is really good for small cuts. And then in here is just a lot of little over-the-counter meds, Tylenol, aspirin, ibuprofen, stuff like that. Just some basic OTC meds. And I keep this in my ruck or somewhere else, somewhere that I've got access to it if we need these non-life saving medicines or first aid or boo-boo items, as I call them. So your IFAK is not your boo-boo kit. And you might say, well, I don't have anywhere else to keep it. I'll keep it right here. I'm telling you, man, somebody else might be working on you. And as a medic, if I walk up and I pull your IFAK and Rolaids fall out, guess what I'm packing your junctional hemorrhage with? I'm packing it with Rolaids because it'll work a little bit. I'm packing it with Rolaids until I find gauze. It's your fault. Should have been gauze in there, asshole. I told you. So life-saving supplies only in your IFAK, and we're going to be ripping this down and going through them right about now. So my IFAK is just in an ammunition pouch, and it is basically in one of these pullouts. I'd pull it out for you, but there's no point because I have another one built pretty much exactly the same right here. And these pullouts are made by OSOE, the original SOE, and these are pretty cool. I like these. These fit in my door panels of my truck, as well as just any 3x ammunition pouch. So I keep a couple of these loaded up when I can. And this one's loaded up with the very traditional contents of an IFAK. This is pretty much what I carry. So obviously, what we are carrying is we're carrying stuff for massive bleeds, massive hemorrhages, life-threatening combat injuries, and gunshot wounds very specifically. So for these things, what we do is we tourniquet the limbs, we pack junctional wounds with gauze, and we seal up our box, and we remove the bad holes, and then if we need to, make new additional holes that are better than the bad holes. But that is a little more advanced. We'll get into it though. It's not crazy. So what I have in this IFAK, really simple, is just some good gauze. And this guys are just H&H compressed gauze. What I'd recommend you guys get is any gauze that is Z-folded and compressed, because you'd be amazed at how much gauze actually does fit in these little things right here. It's a couple yards, and it's a good amount of gauze. And when you're packing junctional wounds or you're packing gunshot wounds, you'd be amazed at how much material you can actually get in there. And you want to get as much in there as possible, because what you're doing is you're providing, just like direct pressure on a wound or on a surface laceration stops the bleeding on the surface. What you're doing is when you're packing a junctional wound is you're packing all this material into this cavity that is now providing direct pressure from the inside out. So you need a lot of gauze. Tampons and all that other bullshit doesn't work. I recommend just Z-packed compressed gauze. If you don't have access to that, or it's a little too expensive, because it is, you can get just some rolled stuff. When you're using the rolled stuff, hold it in one hand and pull from the center, and then work it out of the center, okay? Don't just let your roll fall on the ground and then start packing leaves and dirt into people's wounds if you can avoid it. If you can't avoid it, save their life. So that's on the first side, and that's pretty much the first side of this IFAK. On this side, you'll see I've just got a plain old cat tourniquet. Mine is expired. If your tourniquet's expired, that's okay. Just make sure it's not like significantly sun damaged. Make sure it's also not fake. Carry real tourniquets with the proper branding. If you don't know if your tourniquet's real or not, I encourage you to take your windlass and attempt as hard as you can to break it. If it's good, it won't break. And that's pretty much a pretty rock solid test to know if your tourniquet's going to break when you're tightening on a person. And it should tell you a real tourniquet. There's lots of ways to tell you. You can get like a PDF document that tells, but it will have an expiration date, and it will be marked with like NAR or something like that. Also, I encourage you to carry your tourniquets pre-staged so they are easy to deploy with a single hand. You can find anybody to tell you how to do that. Also in here, in this traditional IFAK, I've got just a chest seal. This is a traditional just hyphen right here. And I believe this is a non-vented, it says hyphen vent. So this is a vented on one side, most likely chest seal. And I only have one in here, and I encourage you to carry two. Again, not my primary IFAK, but this is just one I back up other IFAKs with. So these IFAKs are these hyphen chest seals are just occlusive dressings. They're sticky, they stick on pretty good through sweat and blood, but again, clean the area off as best you can before you apply it, and then those stop bad holes, and then we can make new good holes with these chest darts if we need to. So this is a chest dart. People think these are big and scary, but no, the truth is these aren't that big and scary. This procedure is a little, a needle decompression is the proper treatment if someone has a hemothorax or a pneumothorax or a hemopneumo. And you go in over the intercostal space, you go in the ribs, and you make a small little hole. The problem with this thing is that what your patient really needs when they need a needle dart is they need a chest tube. They need a much more significant procedure. And getting a chest tube involves, typically an emergency room and a doctor, a scalpel, and then his finger going in with some tools as well. And it's brutal. I'll just tell you from witnessing a few of them, a chest tube procedure is pretty graphic. So don't think you're doing too much damage with these little needles when you use them. They're pretty easy to use. Find your proper landmarks, and I'm not going to tell you where to look them up, but you can look them up. You can find your landmarks and go in at the proper space in depth. As long as you know your signs and symptoms and you're using these appropriately, you're probably not going to hurt your patient with one of these needles. Okay? This procedure, although it sounds scary, isn't that scary. Additionally, you can do it a few different times. Obviously, you've got many landmarks for this dart to go in, especially depending on which side is the affected side. But if both sides can be affected, and if you don't hear good lung sounds and you think you're on the affected side and you get some relief and you think you might be wrong now and you might have both sides affected, or your initial judgment was incorrect, go on the other side. It's not a big deal. I've seen people come in from the life flight medics with, 3 darts across the top on both sides and then 2 in the ribs. It looks like a porcupine. It's crazy, but I talked to the medic about it. He's like, well, they were working for about 10 minutes and then they'd stop working. So I just put a new one in right next to it. And I was like, interesting, very cool. So these are not scary. Don't be scared of them. They are big needles, but they just go in. Watch other videos of how to do it. I'm not going to tell you, I don't want the liability on my channel telling you how to play with needles, but get some training on these and they're really not that hard to use. That is pretty much the major equipment I carry in the IFAK. You'll notice lastly there's one thing left in here, and that's because I really don't carry this thing too often. What this is, and I have it in here because the Army issues it in their IFAKs, is a nasopharyngeal airway. This is going to be size 26 because 26 fits most adult males. 28 gets a little big, and the 30s is very large, but a 26 fits most adult males. That's what I throw in my IFAKs. That or maybe a 24. But I'm not a big fan of these. The Army includes these because airway compromise is a huge threat for patients. However, I'm usually around lots of skilled and competent people, And this little Airway is really no better than a competent person holding proper airway positioning. Okay, this thing is not is not an advanced airway by any sake, and I find that they get crushed and damaged when they're packed in all this tactical gear, and oftentimes they'll get forgotten about for a year, and when you pull them out, they'll have a real nasty kink in them that won't come out. And it's make sure something you are actually relying on completely unavailable to use. So I don't really typically even carry these nasal airways. I find that usually I'm around somebody that'll be able to hold an airway open, and I ideally won't have to leave my patient for a prolonged period without being able to monitor their airway and keep it in an appropriate position. But I really also don't find that these nasal airways do that much at all anyway. So you can throw it in there or you cannot. Sometimes for a while I was carrying an oral airway. I've got a few right around here in the corner in my Airway kit. But you can just pick a gambit of oral airways. I like these a little bit better because they protect the airway about the same quality as your nasal airway. But these oral airways, they don't get crushed in your IFAK. The only downside is anybody they're going in, if they've got a gag reflex, they'll pull it out. This is going to go into anybody who's conscious and alert and has a gag reflex. They'll gag on these. The nasal airway, you can actually lube them up and stuff them in your buddy, flip a coin and see who's going first. It's not that much fun. Tell them to swallow as it's going in, and remember, bevel towards the septum, and just rock and roll in there. Use a lot of lube. It's fun, I promise. So guys, that is my IFAK again. Specifically, I like to carry a couple more tourniquets. Now, sometimes I carry them in rubber bands on the outside of my gear. I find that I was getting really muddy here the last couple months, so I moved it to a little pouch here. And I also like, instead of the cat tourniquets, I like carrying these soft T wides. So in addition to the tourniquet that's in my IFAK, I usually carry one in a pocket in my uniform, and I try to carry one more on my LBE, and then sometimes even one more on my actual rifle. And then I try to carry where I can these soft T wide tourniquets. These are metal windlasses, so you'll never have a problem worrying if you got to break this. It's all stitched nylon construction. It's just a little bit heavier duty. It's going to last longer and take a lot of abuse more than the cats do. Also, no Velcro. I kind of don't like the Velcro, so it's your choice. Just all metal hardware. I like these tourniquets a lot better. If you're going to spend your own money on one, just spend yourself a little bit more and get this one, and it's just completely bomb-proof tourniquet. It'll last the rest of your life. Even if you use it on somebody, just get it back when they're done with it, and it'll still just be a little bloody and crusty, but you can use it again. It'll be fine. Other than that, guys, I've got a couple other IFAK styles here. Really, I don't care what style IFAK you use. This one is just a MOLLE webbed pull-out. It's got a tab here that pulls out this interior little organizational compartment that you can then organize your medical gear in. That's completely fine if that's what you like. The advantage of this is you can leave this pouch mounted on the rear, and you can just pull that tab and still get, all of your stuff, and it's on a drawstring so you don't lose it. This one's similar, mounts on a belt or webs on with some clips, and then you've got this little pull tab here that you can pull, and then it opens up. You can pull out this little this little insert that can have medical gear in it, and then you can Velcro some more shit on the interior here. That's all fine. What you will notice that I do standardize amongst all my IFAKs is like red marking or medical marking. So you can see on my actual rig, I've got this little red tether here. That tells me and everybody on my team, because we've told each other, that you need red marking on your pouch that's got medical gear in it, so I can come immediately identify that and pull that quickly. All these pouches have some sort of marking. This extra one does, and this pull out has a little red nylon webbing. If you need to mark your pouch expediently, just get some red electrical tape. I usually carry some. There's some in this trailer for when a guy shows up to patrol. I say, hey, where's your IFAK? I'm gonna mark it with some red tape if you don't mind. And usually they're cool with it. If you've got more time than that, you can also just get some red nylon webbing and then just sew yourself on a tether, or just tie on a little tether onto the pouch so it's marked that way. I do encourage you to always have it marked, because you might find yourself unresponsive and somebody else might need to work on you, and that may be the first thing they see. So The medical gear that is in front of you is the medical gear that gets used, and that will include your fucking roll aids if you keep roll aids in your damn IFAK, so don't do that. So guys, I hope this was enlightening and a lot of fun. Soon we're gonna be going over this big boxes behind me. These are like my platoon level kits or my big camping kits. We've got a sick call box that could take care of a couple patients for a couple days. And then we've got a very big trauma bag in case somebody gets very hurt or a couple patients get hurt at once. I'll be going through those. Those are nothing you need to be carrying on an individual level. I just encourage everyone to carry one of these IFAKs and all whenever they're dealing with firearms pretty much. And then also, later on, we're going to be going over some of this patient movement stuff, the sked, the stretcher, and these tarps, and we'll be going over some movement techniques with some nylon webbing. Remember, getting your patient to hospitalized care is priority number one in trauma care, okay? We are not magicians. We are just here in the meantime. Guys, rock on, stay sharp. This was fun.